As America's founding fathers wrestled with growing pains in the eastern half of North America, the Spanish established 21 Catholic missions across the continent in present-day California. For over half a century, the Spanish taught indigenous populations European crafts like blacksmithing, carpentry, and farming. Though the missions closed in 1833, most of them now once again serve as parish churches, and all 21 are open to the public as museums. To many, they have become sanctuaries of peace and beauty, places for spiritual reflection and historical remembrance. Many mission historians, however, will call attention to the often violent punishments that were inflicted upon the Native American converts, as well as the epidemics that spread through the compounds and killed thousands. Today, mission architecture is a California trademark, as is the road that linked the missions, El Camino Real. At the same time, native Californian ways of life have largely, tragically, disappeared. It's the California missions, the good, the bad, and the ugly, on this episode of Bigfoot's Great American History Show. In 1493, just months after Christopher Columbus returned from his famous voyage to the New World, Pope Alexander VI issued papal bulls granting Spain all lands west of a pole-to-pole dividing line and commanding the Spanish to Christianize them. 250 years later, Spanish conquistadors, accompanied by Catholic priests, had conquered most of the Caribbean, Central America, and the western part of South America. Meanwhile, their claim to Alta California remained largely neglected. Eventually, when Russian fur traders threatened to encroach from Alaska, Charles III, not that one, ordered the viceroy in Mexico City to establish forts, towns, and missions in the unsettled lands. The missions would educate indigenous populations for 10 years, creating Spanish subjects and solidifying the crown's claim to California. As it turned out, the friars selected to accomplish the king's vision had a sometimes conflicting vision of their own. That is, to win as many souls for heaven as possible. The so-called Father of California, Miguel Josep Serra, was born in 1713 on Majorca, off the coast of Spain. At age 18, upon his admission to the Franciscan order, he took the name that would follow him into history. Junipero excelled at his studies and became well known for the quality of his sermons. He was also well known for inflicting shocking self-punishment. He was said to have burned his chest with a torch to encourage penance in others. The devout Serra naturally rejoiced at the chance to save the souls of native Californians. In the spring of 1769, he traveled north from Baja California and dedicated the first of the new California missions in San Diego. There he celebrated Mass in the presence of curious members of the Kumeyaay people. The following year, he established his headquarters at Mission Carmel. On the day after Christmas, he held Alta California's first baptismal ceremony. Before his death, he would baptize more than 5,000 native Californians. By 1823, Spanish priests had dedicated 21 missions from San Diego in the south to San Francisco in the north. These were built roughly one day's ride apart, or about 30 miles, so that supply caravans traveling the region would not have to carry food or camping equipment. The dirt roads linking the missions became known as El Camino Real, or the Royal Road. They roughly followed the route taken on the first Spanish expedition of California, led by Governor and Captain Gaspar de Portola, who had arrived in the region with Junipero Serra. Meanwhile, Spanish soldiers established forts, or presidios, at San Diego, Monterey, San Francisco, and Santa Barbara. Towns, or pueblos, followed. First San Jose in 1777, then a tiny backwater in 1781, which they named Los Angeles. A third pueblo was established in 1797 in present-day Santa Cruz, named Branciforte for the sitting viceroy of New Spain. Brancifortans, incidentally, would later loot Mission Santa Cruz when the priests and neophytes there evacuated during a pirate raid of neighboring Monterey. The missions, of course, all featured a chapel. The priests' rooms were generally attached at a right angle, while two other wings completed a quadrangle around a central courtyard. These were made of adobe, a sun-dried mixture of earth and either straw or manure. Adobe bricks, however, bore limited weight and were liable to collapse during earthquakes. Thus, mission buildings were often low and narrow. The bricks also sometimes dissolved in rain, resulting in the development of the distinctive arched corridors covered with fired red roof tiles. Adolescents and single adults were separated by gender, while couples and young children lived in a village outside the quadrangle. Other rooms on the compound housed soldiers and guests. The rest served as storerooms or workshops for activities like basket weaving, carpentry, and winemaking. A typical compound might also feature tallow stoves, tanning pits, blacksmithing furnaces, and a pottery kiln, as well as orchards, vineyards, stables, a corral and pasture for livestock, and farmland. Supported by Native American labor, many missions generated enormous wealth. Mission San Luis Rey kept over 50,000 animals, while Mission San Gabriel spanned over 1.5 million acres. Long before the Pope or the King of Spain took an interest in California, humans had been living there for thousands of years. At the time of Junipero Serra's arrival, roughly 300,000 Native Americans lived in so-called tribelets, numbering a few hundred members. The tribelets naturally were as diverse as the varied landscapes they inhabited. Anthropologists estimate that they spoke at least 100 different languages. Common to most tribelets, however, was a lifestyle of hunting and gathering. Powerful bows made of sinew and wood were paired with feathered shafts tipped by obsidian arrowheads to hunt game like deer and rabbit, while intricate baskets were woven to hold acorns, seeds, and roots. Chiefs led villagers in war, often waged as revenge for kidnappings, insults, or perceived witchcraft killings. Alliances might be forged through marriage, though most villagers had little contact with tribelets more than 15 miles away. Traditional spiritual beliefs passed down orally. Some Native Americans were drawn to the missions out of curiosity, others by gifts, and others still by the perceived power of Christ. Whether or not the so-called neophytes understood what they were signing up for through the language barriers, once baptized, they were not allowed to change their minds. Those who tried to escape were forcibly returned and subject to flogging or imprisonment. The Franciscans, after all, had not come to California to bring physical comfort, but to win souls for heaven. When a group of captured fugitives was questioned about their motives for leaving, their responses were telling. Several had been clubbed, whipped, or put in stocks in the missions. One simply wanted to return home. Most, however, had fled following the deaths of family members. Indeed, foreign diseases like smallpox and measles decimated native populations. In 1815, the president of the missions reported that, quote, "In many years there were 3 deaths to 2 births." Conflicts between the missions and Native Americans sometimes erupted into violence. Within weeks of Junipero Serra's arrival in San Diego, a skirmish broke out between the Spaniards and the native Kumeyaay, whereupon the Kumeyaay, wielding bows and arrows, were forced to retreat in the face of Spanish muskets. 6 years later, some 800 Native Americans from 15 villages attacked Mission San Diego, torching the compound and beating a friar to death. Later, when some of the attackers were captured, they offered a simple motive: to, quote, live as they did before. In the Chumash uprising of 1824, Chumash neophytes from 3 missions seized control of Mission La Purísima and Mission Santa Barbara. After nearly a month of Chumash occupation at Mission La Purísima, Mexican soldiers bombarded the compound with rifle and cannon fire and forced the Chumash to surrender. Meanwhile, the neophytes of Santa Barbara had stripped their mission of its valuables and escaped into the mountains. Hundreds never returned and were never captured. All the while, Mexican farmers resented the mission's enormous tracts of land, free labor, and resulting competitive advantage. In 1833, the now independent Mexican government passed a law secularizing the missions and, on paper, dividing non-religious mission holdings among the Native Americans and neighboring towns. In actuality, most of the land was seized by corrupt officials or sold to settlers. Sadly, the neophytes were left with neither the real-world training to help them navigate Mexican society, nor a traditional way of life to return to. 15 years later, Mexico ceded California to the United States following the Mexican-American War. Throughout the gold rush that began that same year, violence against Native Americans accelerated. By 1873, the state's indigenous population had plummeted to roughly 1/10 of its pre-mission numbers. At the turn of the 20th century, artists began to sketch mission ruins, leading to revived interest in the buildings and their eventual restoration. Meanwhile, one building where Junipero Serra celebrated Mass stands much as it did in his time: the chapel at Mission San Juan Capistrano, where, famously, swallows return to nest every spring. Just 3 years before pirates attacked Monterey, Americans concluded their own war with pirates in the Mediterranean Sea. To learn more about the Barbary Wars, check out this video. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And let me know your thoughts on the controversial legacy of the missions in the comments below. Until next time, this is Bigfoot saying so long and save me a seat at your next campfire.